You talk about, trying to understand evil. I mean, these things where I don't even get into the details, people could Google it. And it's just like, it makes no sense. You try to, whenever, I'm going to get a little bit graphic here. Whenever I hear these stories of like some CNN producer getting arrested for having imagery of children, I always hope, I read the article just to get the details. I hope it's like they're watching teenage girls and there's some kind of conversation we could have about how high schoolers are overly sexualized. Then you read it, and it's like infants and children being tied to chairs, and there's message boards. So it's not just one guy. Like, he's got a community. And you see this, and you're like, "What? You're a shrink. I'm not. What is the utility to you? Is it just pure?" If you feel,
you really want an answer to that question?
I do, because you were talking about understanding evil. It's like, I can understand evil in the sense of sadism, but a child is weak. Like, what do you want here? It's like beating the crap out of it. Like, taking candy from a baby is not an accomplishment.
No, it's. Oh boy, you really want an answer?
Yes, I want an answer, because I'm not the only one. When I talk about the social media, people are like, I can't wrap my head around it.
All right,
I can understand assault. I can understand murder. I can understand bank robberies. But you read stories like this, I'm like, this is an alien thought process.
Okay. So in the story of Cain and Abel, I'm bringing it up because it's the first biblical story about real people.
Right. Okay.
Right. And it's a murderer and his target.
Yeah.
So that's not fun. That's the first thing that happens in the profane world. Right. Okay. So Cain, he's working away, hypothetically, and he's not getting anywhere. Okay. And there's two reasons for that, possibly. One is that he's doing something wrong, and the other is the cosmos is constituted improperly.
Sure.
And he decides that the cosmos is constituted improperly. So he's doing what he can, and everyone should know it, and he's working himself to death, and it ain't working. And so something's broken. Whereas his brother, like, the sun shines wherever he goes, everyone loves him. So it's Cain's failing, trying hard, failing, making sacrifices, failing. Abel, no effort at all, it's just sailing through life. That's Cain's position. So Cain decides he's going to go and have it out with God, because it's not his fault, obviously.
Right.
And so he says to God that, Abel, everything's going well for him, and here I am suffering away, nothing's working for me, and I'm bitter and miserable and resentful, and no wonder. And God says, well, you got a couple of things wrong with your theory there, buddy. The first theory is that's wrong is that your failure is not what's making you miserable. And God says, there's an intermediary figure playing a role here that you don't understand. He says, sin crouches at your door like a sexually aroused predatory animal, and you invited it in to have its way with you. So you engaged in a creative dialogue with the figure of evil because you felt you were justified, because you're resentful, because you're failing. Now, while you were failing, you could have learned.
Sure.
You could have decided it was your problem, but no, it's God's fault. And so God tells Cain, I don't think it's my fault. I think it's your fault. If you did well, you would be accepted.
Yeah.
All right. So Cain listens, but he doesn't hear. And he goes away, and then he invites his brother to go do something with him, like in good faith, and then he kills him with the rock. Why? To get revenge against God. That's the motive. Right, because Cain is existentially wounded because his sacrifices are being rejected. So he takes God's ideal and he sullies it.
Right.
That's what they're doing with kids. You take the most innocent possible creature and you do the worst possible thing to them. Yeah, that's what it is.
Oh God. So
God is right.
I was thinking about it in terms of a pornographic aspect, but it's actually just literally demonic.
It's like core demonic.
Yeah.
Well, that's why,
that's why it's so alien.
Christ says in the Gospels that,
God.
That the people who sully children, he says something like it would be better for them if they, if a heavy weight was wrapped around their neck and they were thrown into the ocean. It's the worst sin. That's why they're doing it. It's the ultimate middle finger to reality and being. It's like, you fucked with me, I'm going to fuck with you. Right? And so, and then there's that perverse delight there's a novelty edge to that too. So you get sexual gratification for a multitude of reasons. One reason is just sort of reflexive, like sexual activity in itself is pleasurable, but you can put a novelty spin on that. And that's partly what motivates diverse creatures to seek out multiple sexual partners. And you can game that in all sorts of ways. When people start watching pornography, they start with the sorts of things that you described, like attractive women attractive nude pictures of, of lithe women. But then after 10,000 of those, it's like, well, maybe a little variation. And then you can chase, that's that inviting that spirit in. You can chase that edge, right? Serial killers do that. They chase that edge right to the logical conclusion. The logical conclusion is a long, long, long way down. And people don't want to understand this. It's worse even than this, Michael. It's worse than this because, see, one of the things God tells Cain is that he invited this spirit in to have its way with him. It's very specific wording. There's like there's a whole sequence of mythological stories around it. For someone to do something like shoot up an elementary school, they've fantasized about it for like 5,000 hours. Like there's a devil in them, so to speak. You might as well call it that because for all intents and purposes, that's what it is. They've invited it in and it's taken possession of them. And it's fantasizing in that spirit. What's the worst thing I could do?
But that's not the word. That to me, it's a lot easier to wrap my head around. I hate everyone in the school. I'm going to put them in their place. I'm going to show them what's what.
Yeah, but this is an adult killing children. I was specifically referring to Sandy Hook in that case. Yeah. I would say in terms of level of sin, I'm annoyed at my classmates.
Right, yeah.
That's more comprehensible.
Easily,
yeah, definitely. Although, there's a darkness in that. Well, we don't even have to say that. That's extraordinarily deep. No, the desolation of the innocent. That's the thrill in and of itself. Like and then there's more to it. It's like, because this is why it's Luciferian. So Lucifer is the usurper, technically speaking, right? So he's often the intellect, by the way, that wants to put itself in the highest place. Well, there's nothing more that makes you the commanding officer of the cosmos than to take the most profound moral rule imaginable and to invert it, right? That's how much you can get away with. And I know what people like this are like. They also think, I'm so smart, no one will ever catch me. And I can toy with people too because I can hint at this because they're so stupid they won't even notice. That's often why they get caught. That's what happens to Raskolnikov in Crime and Punishment, right? And the prosecutor does a brilliant job of toying with him.
Are you tired of being held back by one-size-fits-all healthcare? Of having your concerns dismissed or being denied that comprehensive lab work you need to truly understand your health? I want to tell you about Marek Health, the premier health optimization platform that's revolutionizing how we approach wellness and longevity. What sets Marek apart isn't just their cutting-edge diagnostic labs or concierge health coaching, it's their commitment to treating you as an individual. Their expert clinical team stays at the forefront of medical research, creates personalized, evidence-based protocols that evolve with you. Unlike other services that rely on cookie-cutter solutions, Marek Health goes the extra mile. They consider your unique lifestyle, blood work, and goals to craft recommendations that actually work for you, whether that's through lifestyle modifications, supplementation, or prescription treatments. And with a remarkable 4.9 out of 5 rating on Trustpilot, you know you're in great hands. The best part is you can get 10% off your order today. Just head to MarekHealth.com and use code Peterson at checkout. That's MarekHealth.com, code Peterson for 10% off. Stop guessing and start optimizing your health today with Marek Health, because your best life starts with your best health.
This is something else I've been wondering about. Why do you think it's so? I'm scared to ask because you answered that last question in a way that I'm not comfortable with in this.
Oh no! Why do you? People don't want to know anything about this.
Why do you think there is such a movement, in your opinion? God, I'm scared to ask this. To downplay this in the media. I had this tweet. I said, if we cared half as much about childhood assaults as we do about global warming, I mean the media.
You mean in the UK?
In the media.
Yeah.
No, just anywhere in America.
Well, let's take the UK.
Let me finish my thought. If the media cared a tenth as much about childhood assaults and certain kinds of assaults as they do about global warming, things would be a lot better. And this is something that you could fix right now.
Yeah.
It's not some hypothetical the environment in 100 years. And this is crazy, moral panic, mass hysteria. Why is that happening?
Well, part of the reason in the UK is that...
Well, the UK is a racial thing. partly.
Well, but they're covering it up,
Right.
Yeah, but there's the racial thing, and there's fear associated with that, and people are afraid that they're going to be targeted by the woke mob if they stand up, and they're going to be called Nazis and neo-Nazis.
They are. They're not wrong.
Of course they are. That's all right. That's one element of it. The other element is the elite. Look, you want to elevate your social status. Now, if you're a good person, you do that by being useful.
Okay.
Okay, but you can game the system. Narcissists and psychopaths game the reputational system. That's their niche.
Sure.
And they do that successfully often. Successfully enough to be attractive, especially if they're men, because naive young women are attracted to psychopaths because they game the system so effectively. Okay, but that proclivity to game the reputational system is a very deep temptation. One of the commandments, I think it's the third, but it might be the fourth, is to not use God's name in vain. And people think that means don't swear. I don't know, maybe. I can never remember the order. It doesn't mean that. It means do not claim divine inspiration for pursuing your own agenda. It's like the worst thing you can do. I'm doing something low and terrible for the best possible reasons. That's the Stalinist situation, right?
Right.
I'm exercising all my sadistic desires, like Beria, and I'm doing this for the benefit of the poor.
Right.
Okay, so you don't ever want to underestimate the attractiveness of moral posturing, especially if someone else is paying for it.
Sure.
Okay, so in the UK, it's like, I'm tolerant, I'm cosmopolitan, I'm open to diversity. We can welcome immigrants of all stripes in. And if the cost for me displaying my cosmopolitan sophistication is that 10,000 working class women get raped, girls, well, no skin off my nose. And so that's the other part of it. I mean, they're afraid. They're afraid of being called Nazis. They are afraid of being prejudiced, because it's easy once there's a pool of bad actors in a given identifiable group to tar the whole group.
Right.
And when you should do that, when you shouldn't, is not a simple question. There's lots of complex reasons, but one of them is there's no limit to the degree that people will elevate their own moral status falsely, especially if someone else pays the price.
I hear you, and that explains the UK, but this is the case in the US as well.
Yeah.
They pretend this isn't a thing, or that it's not a big deal, or it's some kind of right-wing issue. I don't understand.
Well, part of it too, Michael, I think is just that people don't like, you didn't like my explanation for the child rapist.
No, I did not.
Right, but you're not a naive person.
Right.
Okay, so Michael Schellenberger, when he broke the WPATH files, I interviewed him and I asked him, well, we talked about it, and he said that he first got wind of this butchery because I did an interview with Abigail Shrier. Shire?
She's great.
She is great and very, very brave. And I did that just as I was recovering, and it just made me so nervous, like I was barely functioning, and it was such a terrible interview to do. It was really early in the trans butchery cycle, and I knew we'd get pilloried for it. I thought it might sink me, and I thought, we're going ahead with this. And she laid out, as you know, the absolute travesty of this entire catastrophe. Now, Schellenberger watched that, and he said he couldn't believe it. He couldn't believe it. It wasn't until 2 years later that he started, it was in his mind, but I think that's so telling because Schellenberger's not naive. Now, he tilted towards the left, and so he's going to have the kind of temperament that's inclined to think the best of people.
Right.
Which is a great inclination. Except not when you're dealing with psychopaths.
Yeah, right. Okay.
Right, in which case it's exactly the wrong attitude. Right. And the problem with the left often is they have no imagination for evil. And some of that's naivety and some of it's like willful blindness. It's like, you don't want to know. You don't want to know. You don't want to know what sort of snakes there are in people's minds. Like I studied sociological evil and psychological evil for 40 years, right? Trying to get to the bottom of it. I had some pretty bad actors in my clinical practice and saw some things all the way to I wouldn't say all the way to the bottom. Hell's a bottomless pit for a reason.
Sure.
Right? Lies get so deep that you literally can't get to the bottom of them. You scrape something away and you think, finally. It's like, no, just another layer of lies. Well, you know that from studying totalitarianism. But so part of it is, Michael,
well, it's not only that. It's like you read these stories about like someone who's with the underage kid, and you think that's the basement, and then you hear about England, and it's like, oh, this person's a saint.
Oh, yeah.
Compared to that, it's just like,
Oh, yeah.
holy crap! I thought this was the bottom, and there's a trap door, and there's another cellar.
Well, that's what Dante was trying to show.
Yeah, right. Yeah, yeah.
You know, and one of the things I've learned too, this is also something that's awful.